After me, as-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Habiballah.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Habiballah.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Nabiyallah.
As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Nabiyallah.
Wa ala alika
Wa ala alika
wa ashabika
wa ashabika
ya Nurallah.
ya Nurallah.
Sallallahu ta'ala
Sallallahu ta'ala
alayka wa sallam.
alayka wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina
Sayyidina
Maulana
Maulana
Muhammadin
Muhammadin
adada
adada
ma
ma
fi
fi
ilmillah
ilmillah
salatan
salatan
da'imatan
da'imatan
bidawami
bidawami
mulkillah
mulkillah
sallallahu ta'ala alayka wa sallam.
alayka wa sallam.
Benefit of reciting this Durood Sharif is we pray this Durood Sharif once, and Almighty Allah rewards us for praying Durood Sharif 600,000 times. Say Subhanallah.
Subhanallah.
Alhamdulillah, just a small story, inshallah, with a nice moral at the end of it. Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled a very large amount of the country, a very prosperous country. One day, he went on a trip for some distant parts of the country. He did a lot of walking whilst he was on the trip. He would stop at places and then he would get off, he would walk and then climb on again. And then he carried on this journey for a while. When he came back to his palace, he complained that his feet were very, very painful. All the walking that he did. And he explains, he says because it was the first time that he went for such a long trip and the road that he went through was very rough and very stony. The king thought he had a brilliant idea. So he ordered his servants, he called them over, and he said, I have an idea. I have just been on this long trip, and it was so painful for my feet. So I have this idea. He ordered his servants to cover every road of the entire country with leather. With leather. Yes? Because he had a bad trip, and his feet was aching. So that the land would get nice and soft, he says. Definitely, this would need hundreds and thousands of pounds. Also, hundreds and thousands of meters of cow skin. Yes? Then one of his wise servants dared and asked him a question. He says, why do you have to spend that unnecessary amount of money and all this hassle we have to go through? And he suggested, I have an idea if you would listen to me. I have an idea if you would listen to me. He told the king this. So the king said, go ahead and give me your suggestion. What do you suggest? The servant says, why don't you just cut a little piece of leather to cover your feet? Instead of putting all this leather on all the roads outside to cover whole of the country, instead of doing all this, why don't you just cut a piece of leather to cover your feet? The king was surprised. But after giving it some thought, the king agreed to follow his servant's suggestion. And he ordered his servants to go and make him a pair of shoes instead, made out of leather. Say Subhanallah.
Subhanallah.
Okay, I know you might be thinking, well, what does this mean? What's the moral behind this? Listen to the moral. So there is a very valuable lesson of life in this story. In order to improve the quality of our lives sensibly, perhaps it is better to change ourselves, our attitudes, our hearts, and not necessarily the world. Subhanallah. Yes? So sometimes we think we'll go out there and we will change everything. Instead of changing people or changing other things, why don't we change ourselves first? And when we do change ourselves, then you will see a difference when you are telling people to come towards the good and when you are trying to bring them onto the straight path as well. And it's a quote of the Quran, indeed Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is inside themselves. Subhanallah. Yes? Taking this message away from here, inshallah, before we start to change other people, we need to change ourselves. Allah hum sabko कहने सुनने से ज़्यादा अमल की तौफीक अता फरमाए. And if I have said anything wrong during my dars, may Allah Ta'ala with the wasila of the beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam forgive me. Ameen. Wa ma alayna illa al-balag. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.